Hello, everybody. We're live. Hello. Welcome to Monday's Live at 5. So, have you ever felt like your body has become sensitive to everything? Have you ever found yourself saying, I feel like I'm becoming allergic to everything? The wine you were used to enjoy, the food you've been eating for years, the heat, stress, maybe even sensitive to your own hormones, or things like when you eat leftovers or perfumes or having random flushing, itchy skin, waking at 2 o'clock, migraines. And you found yourself wondering, why do I react to everything now? If so, today's conversation is for you. Your body isn't suddenly allergic to life. Your hormones, gut, immune system, nervous system are having a very loud conversation. And your symptoms are the result. One of the things women tell me is, I just feel reactive, not sick, not necessarily allergic, reactive or hypersensitive. Everything feels louder. Hot flushes feel more intense. Wine triggers headaches. Food triggers bloating. Anxiety feels bigger. My skin becomes itchier. Sleep becomes lighter. The body that used to cope with everything suddenly seems to cope with very little. And because the symptoms appear so unrelated, women often think they're imagining it. What makes this difficult is the unpredictability. One day you're fine, next day you're not. One glass of wine you're fine. A glass of wine is fine one week, then next week it's not. One meal causes no issues, the next time it does. Women start feeling like they can't trust their own bodies, and then the restrictions begin. No wine, no cheese, no tomatoes, no chocolate, no leftovers, no joy. And before long, they're exhausted trying to manage a body they no longer understand. Now, when most people hear the word histamine, they think of hay fever, sneezing, watery eyes, an antihistamine tablet, end of story. But if I told you histamine can show up in ways that have nothing to do with pollen? This is one of those topics where women often look at me halfway through a consultation and say, hang on, you've just described me. Because histamine isn't just involved in allergies. It's one of the body's chemical messengers. It's involved in your immune system, digestion, nervous system, skin, even helping regulate stomach acid. The problem isn't histamine itself. Histamine is supposed to be there. The problem is when your body is producing more than it can comfortably handle, or it's struggling to clear it. That's when symptoms start looking completely unrelated. And you know what? You can actually have a deficiency in histamine as well. You can have deficiency or excess, different symptom picture. So, as I say, I have women come in thinking they're becoming allergic to life. So imagine this woman. Right. 5 years ago, she could eat pizza on a Friday night, have a glass of wine, sleep like a log. Now, the same meal, the pizza with wine, leaves her flushed. Her cheeks go bright red. Her heart starts racing. She wakes at 2 o'clock in the morning feeling anxious. The next day, she has a headache. she starts thinking, oh, maybe it's the wine. So she stops drinking wine. Then it happens with other things. It happens with leftovers, after tomatoes, then after just the parmesan, then after a stressful week. Eventually, she says, I think I'm becoming allergic to everything. She isn't necessarily allergic, but her histamine bucket is overflowing. I often explain it like this. Imagine you're carrying a bucket all day and everything is adding a little bit of water, a poor night's sleep, stress at work, hormone fluctuations, a glass of wine, leftover spaghetti, hay fever season, a gut that's a little bit inflamed. None of these things are necessarily a problem on their own, but together, eventually the bucket overflows. Now imagine your nervous system, hormones, gut, immune system are all sharing the same bucket. For years, the bucket was just fine, right? Managed, not a problem. Then menopause arrived. Then stress increased. Sleep worsened. Hormones changed. The bucket got fuller and fuller. And perimenopause doesn't necessarily pour more in the bucket. Often, it simply makes the bucket smaller. Your capacity to handle things, your coping levels. Now it only takes one extra thing to make it overflow. And when it overflows, that's when the symptoms appear. When it overflows, it looks like your body has suddenly reacted to one thing. It didn't. That final thing was simply the last drop. That's why women often say, but I ate that last week and I was fine. Exactly. Last week your bucket wasn't full. Can you see why your body doesn't react every single time to the same trigger? One of the things we don't talk enough about in menopause is histamine. So, as I say, histamine isn't a villain. Histamine is a normal chemical messenger in the body. The problem isn't having histamine. The problem is the bucket becomes too full. Now, hormones also to understand that hormones influence histamine and histamine influences hormones. So there is more to the story than just pollen in the air. And as progesterone declines and estrogen fluctuates, some women become more sensitive to histamine and inflammatory triggers. Then you add stress, you add poor sleep, you add gut dysfunction, you add microbiome changes, and suddenly the system becomes much more reactive than it used to be. Now, some of you may have heard of MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome. It's become a lot more talked about over the last few years, especially in the online world. So MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, is a recognized condition where the mast cells become overactive and release excessive amounts of histamine and other inflammatory chemicals, often causing symptoms across multiple body systems. But here's the important distinction. Not every woman who becomes more histamine sensitive during perimenopause has MCAS. What I see far more commonly is women whose hormones are changing, whose gut and nervous system are under pressure, and whose histamine bucket has become much easier to overflow. In other words, you don't need a diagnosis of mast cell activation syndrome for histamine to become a part of your story. And that's why I'm less interested in labels and much more interested in understanding why your particular bucket is overflowing. Because one of the things I see over and over, is women blaming food And food can absolutely be a part of the picture, but rarely the whole picture. What I often see is it can be the food, it can be the timing of the food, it can be the ratio, like not just your tolerable level, going beyond your tolerable level, but it could also be hormone fluctuations, gut dysfunction, stress overload, poor sleep, an overwhelmed nervous system. And histamine is simply a messenger telling us the bucket is full. The symptom isn't random. The symptom is information. Another pattern I see is a woman that tells me, I've been diagnosed with IBS, irritable bowel. I've got migraines. My allergies are getting worse. I'm waking with anxiety or feeling of doom. My skin has become itchy. I've developed reflux. Each specialist has looked at one symptom. Each diagnosis, it's in itself made sense, but no one stepped back and asked, could these all be connected? And that's what I love doing. Not because I have a magic answer. I wish I did, and I'd sprinkle that answer and the magic on everybody, but because I love helping women connect the dots. Sometimes your body isn't giving you 6 different problems. It's telling you a story in 6 different ways, waiting for you to listen. And that's why I say symptoms tell a story. They're clues. They're not random acts of betrayal. And in midlife, adding fluctuating hormones into the mix, estrogen can encourage more histamine release. Progesterone normally helps calm things down. And as progesterone declines during perimenopause, the calming influence becomes weaker. At the same time, stress is higher, sleep is poorer, gut health is often under pressure or compromised. So it's no surprise that women suddenly feel like they're reacting to things they tolerated perfectly well for years. It isn't because your body has become weak. It's because your body has become more reactive. And that's a very different conversation. So the goal isn't to become frightened of food or to live on lettuce or avoid every possible trigger. The goal is to understand your bucket, to reduce the load where you can, to support the gut, to calm the nervous system, to understand how your hormones fit into this picture. Because once you understand the pattern, your symptoms stop feeling random. And that's often the moment that women stop feeling frightened by their own body. And I actually think this is one of the strongest missing links that a lot of women have not been shown, or hasn't been explained. Right? And that's why I help women understand why they feel the way they do, not just here's a supplement for that symptom. And that's exactly what I mean when I say symptoms tell a story. I don't see 6 separate problems. I see one conversation the body is trying to have. The women don't want another list of foods they can't eat. They don't want another complicated protocol. They want their body to feel predictable again. And they want to enjoy a meal without wondering what will happen next. If that sounds like you, if you're in that category, if you want to have more confidence, comfort, and trust in your body, then you need to understand all the moving parts. A couple of quick myths, but I'll leave them more for Friday's Real Talk. Myth, it's just allergies. Really, the reality is many midlife histamine issues are actually hormone, gut, nervous, immune system conversations. Another myth, I've just got to cut out everything. the goal isn't permanent restriction. The goal is to reduce the load, right, while supporting the system. Another myth, HRT will fix everything. HRT can help some women, but hormones are only one part of the story. As I said, gut health, stress, sleep, nervous system regulation still matter. There is no magic pill. So what can you do? As I've just indicated, lower the load. Pay attention to the patterns, not perfection. You can support your gut because histamine breakdown starts there. You can calm your nervous system because stress is one of the most overlooked histamine triggers that I see. Do you need to go to a GP? If symptoms persist after you've sort of addressed some of those things I've just mentioned, then you can certainly talk to your GP about hormone changes, about allergies versus, or whether it's your GP or your healthcare practitioner in reality, allergies versus histamine intolerance, especially with things like migraines as well. And talk to your healthcare provider about your digestive system and what tests, if any, would be of help. Because not everything should automatically be labeled menopause. And that's what we're talking about at the moment. The catchphrase is meno washing, putting everything under the heading of menopause, right? The danger isn't the occasional reaction. It's actually about the danger I see is people are shrinking their lives, more restrictions, more fear, more foods removed, more anxiety. And you can see, oh, can I eat that or can I not? It's going to build the anxiety. And if you're not getting the nutrients in that you need, your anxiety is going to worsen as well. And then there's that lack of confidence and less freedom to be able to go out and do things that you enjoy. And that's not the outcome I want for women. The goal isn't to become frightened of food. The goal is to not to live on lettuce, as I said. The goal is to understand your bucket, because when you understand the pattern, right, your body stops feeling unpredictable. So I'd love to know, when you say I react to everything, what does that actually look like for you? I am just going on to see if there's any questions on, because it's not showing me here. When you say I react to everything, what does it look like for you? Is it flushing? Is it headaches? Is it itching? Is it food intolerances, anxiety, poor sleep? Because I think many women are going to realize from listening to this that they're not nearly as alone as they thought. Because that's what I hear from a lot of women. Joining this group to know that I'm not alone is probably the most common one that I've had of late. The reason for not, okay, no questions. Hello to everyone that's here live. All right, ladies, you're not alone. And the more we share this information, the more we comment on these videos to let other women know that you're struggling the same way, it's really supportive for each other. So being a bit longer this time because it is a bigger subject. I was also going to be putting gut health and bloating in this one live, and I've decided I had to pull it back, otherwise I'd still be going on, rabbiting on for another 10 minutes. Okay, ladies, any questions that you have about this, pop them in the comments below, reach out to me. Friday is when I answer the questions and give you a little bit more of a broader understanding of what's going on. All right, bye for now.